welcome back. It's been a minute, or an hour, or 3 months, 2 months, 3 months since I've talked to you guys. It's been a minute, but I am here to talk about my September, October, and November wrap up. First, let's talk about what's been going on. I moved. And I'm still trying to figure out where I want to film. So this kitchen is pretty yellow, so I'm not sure I'm going to stay here. I'm in the kitchen right now, casual. I was really sick and in the hospital for most of November, so I'm getting back into it. I'm here. I posted a little bit on my Twitter. If you guys don't follow me on Twitter, it's just @bookso with 2 H's. All the links to my social medias are down below, but I was sick in the hospital and I figured I wouldn't get to any filming until December. It's just been a lot of stuff, guys. Work and then moving and then being sick. I filmed 2 videos in October for Halloween and then I ended up in the hospital. So, you know, I mean, everything's good. It wasn't anything like really life-threatening. I'm out of the hospital. I'm good now. I have to go back for surgery in January, but it's a minimal surgery, so I'm fine, I'm good, I'm a-okay. But I just wanted to let you guys know that is why I have been absent from the booktubes for a while. I haven't even been keeping up with people's videos, but I have been reading and listening to a lot of books, and this is so weird that I have to go all the way back to September. I've got my Goodreads here just so I can like refresh all the way back to September. I have 11 books that I read between the months of September, October, and November, and I'm very proud of myself for that. It was a pretty good batting average for those 3 months. So let's just get into it because I've got 11 books to talk about. The first book that I read in the month of September, which I think I read the majority of it actually in August, so it feels kind of weird to talk about this because I think even when I posted my September TBR, I had already finished it. That is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Court of Thorns and Roses trilogy, possibly 6-book series. Nobody really knows if it's going to be 2 trilogies or if it's going to be 6 books in the series. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. If you guys, I don't want to spoil you for the second one, but the first one is a Beauty and the Beast retelling with fairies, and it's interesting, but I think A Court of Mist and Fury is way better than A Court of Thorns and Roses, and A Court of Thorns and Roses was so short that it's totally worth it to pick that one up just to get to this one, this chunky, beautiful masterpiece that just flipped everything around in true Sarah J. Maas fashion. The only problem that I had with this book is that, and I think this is a pretty similar problem that other people have had, is that this book and the first book felt a little disjointed. I feel like she could have done a little more to ease the transition, so that's why I gave it a 4.5 instead of 5 stars. Then I picked up The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas, and this is another one that I read mostly in August and just happened to finish in September. The Assassin's Blade are 5 short stories that follow Selena Sardothien before the events of Throne of Glass, the first book in the Throne of Glass series. You don't want to pick these up until I think you've read the first 2 Throne of Glass books. I read this after I read the first 3, and I actually ended up starting listening to Queen of Shadows, and I'm really glad that I picked this up before because there are a lot of references. Like, this is an essential. It's not just side stories. It's essential to the series. I rated each individual story. So the first one is called The Assassin and the Pirate Lord. I really liked that one. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The second one is called The Assassin and the Healer. That one was really short. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The third one was The Assassin in the Desert, and I think this was my favorite. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The Assassin in the Underworld is the fourth one. I gave that a 4 out of 5 stars. And The Assassin in the Empire, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up one of my favorite reads of 2016. I picked up Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book in the Dark Artifices trilogy. It follows Emma Carstairs and Julian Blackthorne in the LA Institute, and they're trying to figure out, there are all these mysterious mundane murders, and they're trying to figure out why, and I loved this. I loved this book. I imagine that I feel about this book the way people feel about The Mortal Instruments and The Infernal Devices, because I read those so late. No, I read some of them in 2015 and some of them I read this year in 2016. And I feel like if I had grown up with Cassandra Clare, I would have felt differently about those series. Don't get me wrong, I liked them, but there's a lot of people that grew up with that series that are obsessed with those characters and read the books as they were released, and this is how I feel about this series. I am obsessed. I honestly, I'm gonna do a video, but I've started defacing it. If you guys have seen Jenna Claire's defacing Sarah J Maas books videos, they're so cool and I love it. And I didn't write in the story, I've tabbed in the story, but on the outside I wrote some quotes, and then I've started drawing. I'm gonna draw a couple runes in the back cover here with other quotes, and this book is just, to me, is just like skyrocketed away from all of her other series in maturity, in plot, in characters. I just connected so much with Emma Carstairs. I love Julian Blackthorne, all of the Blackthorns. I absolutely adored this book. I cannot wait for Lord of Shadows. This book is one of my favorite reads. This book is one of my favorite reads of 2016. It's so freaking good. Then I picked up Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This is the first book in the Lunar Chronicles series, which is a sci-fi retelling of fairy tales, and as you can guess by the cover and the title, this one is loosely based on Cinderella. I loved this book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think this book is really, really important in young adult literature. This is a female protagonist with multiple physical disabilities, and the majority of the cast of characters, aside from the protagonist, are people of color, and I just want to applaud Marissa Meyer for doing this. It's set in Beijing, New Beijing in the future, and it's just so amazing. Then I read a book of poetry called The Chaos of Longing by K.Y. Robinson. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. This book spoke to me on so many levels. Also, I do want to say that I don't know much about poetry, so I'm not going to be judging like the technicality. I'm not reviewing it on the technicality of it. I'm just reviewing it purely based on content and how it made me feel and flow and things like that. I can't say anything about the technical aspects of poetry, so I'm not even gonna try. I absolutely love the messages this section of poems were conveying, and it just really spoke to me when I really needed it to speak to me. So I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It was very, very much what I needed to read at the time. Then I read The Thousandth Floor by Catherine McGee. This book is about Manhattan that has been turned into one giant building with 1,000 floors. And basically it's treated as a hierarchy, so the higher up you live, the more money you have, the more prestige you have, and it follows a lot of different POVs, I think 5 POVs, but the main focus of the story is the girl that lives on the the 1,000th floor. And honestly, I gave this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. It was interesting, but it was literally Gossip Girl with some sci-fi elements. And the only thing that intrigued me was in the prologue of this novel, you find out that someone has fallen from the 1,000th floor from the top, and I really wanted to know who it was, and there was kind of all this suspension building up, and the mystery behind figuring out who it was really the only thing keeping me going. A lot of the other stuff, the romances and everything else, were just kind of fell flat. And like literally, I think in my Goodreads review, add me on Goodreads, I put like, this character is Serena van der Woodsen. This character is exactly Blair Waldorf. Like, it's literally Gossip Girl. You can tell. And so that's why I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up The Perfectionists by Sarah Shepard. Sarah Shepard writes young adult mystery novels. She also wrote the Pretty Little Liars series, which I read like 2 of those books, but it turned into 14 books and I was like, nah. But this is a duology and I really did enjoy the first one. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't write a review on my Goodreads, so I can't really remember specifics as to why I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, but it was good, it was interesting, and I am going to pick up the second one. Then I picked up The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. This is the first book in the Remnant Chronicles, which is a high fantasy young adult trilogy. I give this one a 4 out of 5 stars. This is a book about a girl who runs away from an arranged marriage, which is one of my all-time favorite tropes. Freaking love it. And 2 people are sent after her, the prince that she was supposed to marry, as well as an assassin. And throughout this whole book, you don't know who is who. It tells the story from all 3 of their perspectives, but it just says prince and it just says assassin, so you don't really know who is who. I guessed right, by the way. I give this a 4 out of 5 stars simply because the 50 or 100 so pages after she runs away were a little bland for me, and then it kind of picked up and just took off. And I really liked the second half of this book, and it's definitely, the Remnant Chronicles are definitely one of my favorite series. Then I picked up Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. I really liked this book. It was such a pleasant surprise. This is another young adult high fantasy series. This follows Yelena Sardothien. I'm just kidding. This follows Yelena. She is a prisoner in this military-based country, and she is given the opportunity to become the poison taster instead of getting executed. And she decides to take up this job, so she has to become the poison taster for the commander of this military country. She's still a prisoner, but she's a poison taster. It just follows her story. I really did not, I thought this was going to be kind of a mid 3-star book for me, average young adult high fantasy. I would like to say I'm so happy with the representation in this book. This author, I wish I tabbed the page, but she talks about pigmented in people's skins. So we know that these people are not just tan from the sun, they are people of color. And Yelena is one of those people. She has pigmented skin, not from the sun. It is mentioned. There is no qualms about this. Yelena is a woman of color in this series, and I'm just so here for it. I just love it. And also, there is a transgender character, and saying who it is and if they're male to female or female to male will probably spoil it for you, so I'm not gonna say anything, but it's mentioned and I think it's really good representation. It felt like really good representation to me anyway, and that's why I'm going to pose a question. If there are any of my followers who do identify as trans and have read this book, will you tell me if it's good representation, because I am not transgender and I don't want to overstep any boundaries or think something is good and preach for it when it actually isn't good. But I really would appreciate if any of you guys had some insight on that. It seemed like really, really good representation in this book, but I do want to double check before I keep praising it for that. Then I read the last 2 books in the Remnant Chronicles. I'm going to mention them together because I read them back to back. The Heart of Betrayal as well as The Beauty of Darkness. I gave them both 5 out of 5 stars. The places that this series went was just freaking amazing. I loved it, I loved it, I loved it, I loved it, I loved it. So, so good. I'm not going to talk about plot because I'll spoil ya. Read it. I loved it. The main character is fantastic. The side characters are fantastic. The world is so intricate. I do have one thing to say. I wish this book was split into 2 books, because going from 2 books that are this size and then going to almost double that, like, come on, just make it a 4-book series. Not everything has to be a trilogy. And to wrap up my glorious months of reading, I did a beautiful reread, and actually as a re-listen over all 3 of those months, and that was A Storm of Swords by, I almost said J.K. Rowling, by George R.R. Martin. This is the third book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. I have been steadily rereading these, re-listening to them. My boyfriend is listening to them for the first time. He's a little bit ahead of me, but I've been re-listening to them because, guys, Winds of Winter got an international serial number. So I think it's gonna happen in 2017. So I gotta be ready, I gotta be refreshed. I stopped watching the show so I won't be spoiled. So if any of you guys made it through that video, God bless your heart, because that would probably turn into a really long wrap up. But thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and trust me when I say that I will see you again soon. Goodbye!